The mission there, from what I understand, the history of the mission work in El Salvador, they began sending missionaries down there, I believe, in the late 40s or the early 50s, and they just sent a few down there, and after like a good reception, they started sending some more, but they had to halt for a while, withdraw the missionaries, I believe, for some time. And I think it was mostly due because of recently they had a civil war, and it was a war between the government and just the organized crime in El Salvador, the gangs and everything like that. And that was, I think that was really, it was something that was very just impactful on the government as well as the culture and people of El Salvador, in that it was just kind of ripping itself apart, really. And the Civil War, I'm not exactly sure when it started. I want to say it's like the 70s, the late 70s, but I'm not sure on that. But it did end in 1991. The Civil War was ended when the government made kind of like what they called a peace treaty with the gangs, in that they made some kind of agreement. And so from that, you can kind of, guess that, there's a huge influence of gangs in El Salvador, and that's definitely something that we can talk about. And so once that, was kind of all settled, I knew that there were missionaries at a certain time during the war. So that work was definitely happening. And but I think between the time of the 50s to now, the church has grown tremendously in El Salvador. The people have been just very receptive, and I think for a long time they've just kind of been looking for something, because for years the church has been predominantly the Catholic Church, and I think for a while the government has placed exclusivity to the Catholic Church, until recently, when they kind of let freedom of religion down there. And so once they did that, a lot of people that I guess weren't all that inclined to go to be Catholic, they were looking for other things, which I think is which is a real blessing, because a lot of people were looking for something else. And I think once that happened, the evangelical church definitely took its hold down in El Salvador. There are a lot of different evangelical, sects and everything like that down there, which is definitely interesting to see. It's interesting to see the different churches that are available for people. They have the Assemblies of God. They have something called the Friends of Israel. All of these churches, which of course preach from the Bible and everything like that, but very different than probably the churches that we might encounter here, or at least just in the United States maybe. But the evangelical church is really huge on their hymns and shouting and chanting. And so whenever there's a meeting of the evangelical church, you definitely know it, because there's a lot of just a lot of with clapping. And so and they love to broadcast that. They put their speakers out in front of the doors, and they have their hymns, and they sing. And so it definitely attracts a lot of attention. That was something that was very interesting to me. I was just like, oh wow, it's definitely different than the Mormon church or our church. They definitely are very loud and open, whereas we have kind of quieter, more reverent meetings. And so that was a big change. And as far as the more along the lines of like the missionary work, since a lot of people are searching for the truth, there's churches, like I said, it's been growing a lot. And the stakes, as far as I understand, there's the East and the West mission. And the East mission, they tend, I think they have more of the industrialized part of the mission, as far as from what I've been told from some friends that have gone over there. And that being, they have I think it's a little bit more difficult because people I think they have a little bit more money over there. And I'm not speaking from experience, and that's just what I have kind of, deduced, is that they, since they do that, they're a little bit more, set in their ways kind of thing. And I think the church has, grown there, but I don't think it has grown as much as it has in the West Mission. And I think that might have been one of the reasons why, actually a year into my mission, we gave 2 of the states closest to them to the other mission. So we changed our boundaries. We shortened our boundaries to just the states of Santa Ana, Ahuachapan, and Sonsonate, just those 3 states. And so that was one reason. And I think it was just because of the number of stakes that were in the western part of El Salvador. That was something that I was very impressed about too, was just how many stakes there were. There were quite a bit. I wasn't really expecting that much. I honestly, from what people had told me, I was expecting, maybe like some huts somewhere that the church was renting out, as far as like, big meeting houses, wards and stuff like that. But the church has a really big influence in El Salvador. I think everyone has seen our church buildings because they're very distinct, because they have the spire and everything, and everyone knows who at least the Mormons are, and so I think that's definitely something that's very good. There's a really big influence in the church, and that's like basically the basis of the church there, and as far as the mission goes, it kind of like follows along with it. I think it's been steadily growing as well. So